No, you're fine. All right. Hello. Can I get your attention? Do I have to separate y'all? Okay. All right, let's see. Okay. Yay, technology. Um, thank y'all for getting here. It's I think I mentioned when I sent the Zoom link out, we're on a new ticketing plant platform. So we didn't have it set up where we knew how many people were actually coming in person and how many of you are online. But for those of you online, thanks for signing in. It's been a busy season. We got a lot going on. And it's kind of like, oh yeah, and we have a plant sale. So I'm going grayer by the minute. But no, we're really excited. This is always kind of like the kickoff to the fall, is getting, the plant sale ready and getting all that put together. But before we delve right into the plant sale, I wanted to just give a couple highlights that are coming up. Next Tuesday on the 17th, we've got locally rooted embracing ecological landscaping with native plants. This is working with Keep Winston-Salem Beautiful. I think I'm forgetting names. It's just a fact of life right now. But our speakers are both from the city of Winston-Salem and also from Reynolda Gardens, talking about native plants. So we're excited to have them here. We were going to have another one on October 7th or 8th, but Joey was going to give a great talk on peppers, but Joey has a more important thing. They've got a new arrival coming to their family, so we want to give him our love and support and let him know that we are excited about this. As you know, they're doing their own little propagation of having their family grow. So we're really happy for Joey and Mary. So let's keep everyone in our thoughts and prayers with them of everything going as smoothly as possible. But then on October 15th, we're going to have the Forest Service out here talking about not only the burn that we did out here at Reynolda, but just about prescribed burning in North Carolina. If you weren't here for that, that was really exciting. I was trying to find the photo of Joey's little devilish grin with the blazing fire behind him. But we're looking forward to having them talk. That was a really exciting moment this past spring of actually getting the meadow burned. It's exciting for us. And then October 1st, when I checked last night, we only have about 6 spots left for this container class with Michelle. So if you're interested, you better get on it. But this is always a fun thing. Michelle is just an artist and coming up with combinations, and she's fun to work with in terms of getting ideas from her. So I just wanted to give a shout out about that. And I think the wreath classes are up online as well. So jump on those because those always sell out. So a lot of exciting things going on. There is a little bit of a distraction for us right now. Just a small project we've been working on for about a year. And we're so close to actually having this ready to open to the public. We actually our first big shipment from Florida showed up on Monday, so we got that unloaded. So we're starting to see things really start taking shape in terms of vegetatively in conservatory. And I do want to give a shout out to the Garden Club Council of Winston-Salem, Forsyth County, because they really, we appealed to them for some financial support to filling at least the vegetative side of the conservatory, and they stepped up. It's fantastic. It's always been a great partnership, and we're thankful for them. But October 8th is going to be the formal public ribbon cutting for the conservatory, the welcome center, retail, all those things. So, and October 9th, my phone is off. Do not call me. Do not reach out. I will be somewhere in the woods, just decompressing. Because it's been a long road, but I will tell you, no matter how stressful it gets, the minute you stand in that palm house, looking at the glass and looking at the transformation, it is worth it. We're really excited about this project. So, onward to plants. As always, at the beginning and the end, I try to make sure to run through all the details for this, and this is usually when I figure out when I've got a typo in my details. But basically, Friends of Reynolda Gardens is one of the benefits. You get early access to those plants. And if spring was any indication, 25% of the plants were gone before we even had the plant sale. So it's important. And those pre-orders we will take those up until about 8 p.m. on Wednesday before the plant sale. So that's on September 25th. We do ask that you do pay for your pre-orders before you pick up. It just makes it, it's a lot of people picking up plants, and it just makes it a little easier on us if it's just a quick, hey, Jane Doe's here to pick up her plants. Great, here we go. But one of the nice options is you can still shop after you pick up, because there's going to be more plants out there that I know you're going to want. And we will send the link out for that pre-order shortly after this talk. It's we try to, I think, 2 o'clock. I don't know if it's set for exactly. If it doesn't go out at 2 o'clock, this gentleman right here to my left is Raphael, so you can find him. But we do, that should go out with the link. And it is a process. We're trying to work with Wake so we could get this automated, so it's not me processing every individual order. But once we get it tallied, make sure we've got the plants. We send you the total and the payment link. And again, pickup will be on Friday, September 27th from 10 to 6. So, good range of time, even for those of you who can't make it here on person for this talk, after work, just swing by, pick up your plants, and you're ready for the weekend. And again, we finally got on the ball about making sure the taxes were included. Before, we used to have to take that out of our proceeds. So Uncle Sam gets a portion of the sale as well. And we do have that option. If you can shop, pick up your plants, and there's additional shopping, shop to your heart's delight. And if you're listening or in your audience and you aren't a friend, you can still sign up. The cutoff for that is going to be Friday or Sunday, September 22nd. And that's just the fact that if you sign up online, it takes that long to make it through the system to get to us so that we can still get you the link. It's just the nature of how the system works. And again, as always, the sale is going to be on the front lawn of Reynolda House, and it'll run from 8 to 2. We're kind of fingers crossed that it's like spring's plant sale around noon. We were standing around with like 8 boxwoods left, and that was it. We're kind of a little shell shocked, but it was wonderful. That's what we want again. Again, just running through the email with the link will go out after today's talk. I think the title of the email is pre-order your favorites from the fall plant sale. If you don't immediately see it, check your spam folder. That's sometimes the first place that we find these things end up. If you still don't see it, just email me, and it's just John, Jon at reynolda.org, and we'll double check to make sure you're up to date and everything. Get that solved, because I do not want to stand between you and your plants. So with that being said, let's talk about plants. I think we've got, even with everything going on, Hayden's been really good about, making sure we've got a really robust plant sale. We've got a lot of really cool perennials, some really cool shrubs, stuff that you are not going to find anywhere else. And that's always my goal, is to, of course, have some of the staples, but some stuff that, differentiates you from everyone else. So let's fly through this and I'll kind of run through some stuff I wasn't able to do slides for because we'd be here forever and just if you want to make notes. But just going through, starting with our perennials, Agastache Blue Fortune. This one is actually a hybrid between one of our natives and a Asian species, but it is an absolute pollinator magnet, and it flowers for a good period during the summer. If it starts looking a little raggedy, this is a plant, just hack it back a little bit, deadhead it, it'll reflush and continue flowering. This is one that we have in the blue and yellow garden. It's a really easy perennial, and just the pollinators just absolutely adore it. Um, let's see. This, if you had told me a couple years ago that, oh, I got this really cool ajuga, I'd be like, really? Um, but a friend of ours he's up in Michigan, Chris Hansen, he used to be with Wayside Gardens. He was their new plant person at the time, but he's a hardcore plant geek like myself, and he's been breeding. He's been breeding not only ajugos, but also hens and chicks, but he's got some just breakthroughs on ajugas. And these things they're great as ground covers. They're also great if you want to put them in containers. If you want something that, will fill a space, there's an older variety called Black Scallop that I always loved because it looked like it had been lacquered. But these new ones that have come out, the colors on them are amazing in terms of foliage. It's a great ground cover. When it comes into flower, I've always seen bumblebees going crazy on the flowers. But look at these colors he's come up with. Some of these, there was one called, I think, Blueberry Muffin was where that was one of the parents of a lot of these that had that narrow foliage, just a whole different texture. But he's got, you can bet Cordial Canary is going to be in the blue and yellow garden because when you get that combination, it's kind of a no-brainer to add. We have all four of these for the plant sale. But Fancy Finch, I was looking at that bronzing color. I could see that mixing perfectly with autumn fern in a container. But what's nice is they'll keep that color throughout the season. It's kind of like a heuchera, but a little bit more durable than a heuchera. And then you get these brilliant, almost cobalt blue flowers that come out on them. And I love this. I want to go up and visit him. His rock garden, if you follow him online, his rock garden is just jaw dropping. But I mean, just the colors that you see, and then you get that oomph of the blue, which just, I think on most of those colors, it just contrasts really nicely. So yes, I'm excited about ajugas. Yes, partial shade, they'll be a little slower, but they've actually, I was kind of concerned because sometimes when I see gold foliage on a plant, I'm like, oh, this is going to be torture watching this thing burn. But Tony Avon's been growing some of these, and they've been doing fantastic in the garden. It's always one of those things as you transition from shade into more sun, just make sure you've got a little bit more moisture going to the plant. But I'm excited to play around with these. I think, we may have to set some of these aside for the container class that Michelle's doing that everyone's going to sign up for later. In terms of just critter resistant, any of the ornamental onions are fantastic. They just do not get bothered. This one has a funny story behind it. Tony Avent went and visited, I can't remember the gentleman's name that these came from, but he was known as Mr. Onion. And he had been breeding ornamental onions, and Tony Avent was touring with him, and he was like, oh, what do you recommend the most? And so he gave Tony Avent two bulbs way back, I think, early 2000. And since then, John Walters of Walters Garden visited Tony. Tony showed him the plant, sent him back with two quart pots. They're now producing 1 million plants a year of this. It was the 2018 Perennial Plant Association's Plant of the Year. This one, it's finished flowering up for us, but it's almost like, in some ways I look at it, it looks like chives on steroids. But really nice foliage to it. It's got that, oniony scent, which deters animals. But in late summer, you'll get these wonderful, they're a little bit bigger than a golf ball size blooms on it, but it's just tough as nails. It's just a fantastic plant for the garden. And there has since, I think this one really kicked off some interest in more breeding. So there's some really cool new ones coming down the pipeline as well. But Allium Millennium, butterfly weed. This is one that I'm just every year I'm like, Hayden, just make sure it's in there. I don't think there's ever going to not be a demand for butterfly weed. We've got just the straight species, which is typically orange. As many of you know, the foliage on butterfly weed and most of the Asclepias, it's got a latex sap to it. That's what the caterpillars ingest that then makes them poisonous so that the birds don't eat them. It's critical in terms of their life cycle. Um, but one of the things I always say is with butterfly weed, this species especially, make sure where you're planting it is where you want it to be. It does not like being transplanted. It's very unhappy and probably will not make it. So make sure you've got that space picked out. We also have this one called Hello Yellow that is just a yellow variant that's been produced. Sometimes you hear, there's some undercurrents out there. Oh, it's a cultivar, it's bad. Throwing a name on a plant does not change the genetics of the plant. Um, this is one when I've gone up to Downton Park, I've seen yellow forms up there. This is just one that if you're buying Hello Yellow, you're getting a yellow form of butterfly weed. Has all the same benefits as the straight species, but just if you need a yellow color palette, this is the one to use. This is a really nice Amsonia, blue ice. This came out years ago. I remember Tony Avent had it in the garden. My wife Adrian always loved this one because it was a much darker flower on when you think of Amsonia. Most of your Amsonias are blue stars. It's more of a pale blue. Um, this one has much wider foliage, and it's interesting because Mount Cuba, that does a lot of plant trials, primarily focused on native plants. They did a whole plant trial on Amsonia. And they actually determined this one, that was thought to be a hybrid is probably the Eurasian species. But it's it's just a fantastic plant, really dark blue flowers to it. Excuse me. This is one that I always loved. I mean, I would plant for the fall color. You just get this gorgeous gold fall color, almost going to an more of an amber. Um, in spring, the photo up on the top, I think, was taken from Chanticleer. They used to have like a bed in the middle of a traffic circle that was just chock block full of Amsonia and all those light blue colors. I wish they had selected a couple out of there. But you just get this fantastic wispy foliage. It's wonderful during the growing season before it gets the fall color. As the wind blows, you can see it move. It gives you that movement in the garden, but then it rewards you later on in the season with just this fantastic fall color. We had a friend that did an arrangement. He used stems of this and one of the really black purple dahlias, and I was never thought of using Amsonia as a cut, using the foliage as a cut flower. But I used to use this back when I was at High Point University. We'd plant these big sweeps of bulbs, and they're like, "Oh, what do you do about, we need to cut the bulb foliage. It doesn't look good." Well, I'd plant it with Amsonia because as the bulbs, are done flowering and start going down, the Amsonia is up and hiding everything. So that's a good tactic, even with other perennials, of incorporate where you've got bulbs. So you don't have to worry about the bulb foliage because your perennial foliage is hiding it. But this has just been a fantastic plant. I love if you have the room to do a couple of them together to really make a statement, it just jumps out. This is a really fun, it's a seed strain of coneflowers called Cheyenne Spirit. And it's kind of like you never know unless it's in flower and you buy it. It could be white, it could be yellow, it could be red, it could be orange. Um, and that's kind of the fun of it, just getting this whole tutti frutti mix to it. It's really been a fantastic performer in terms of it will, like, from seed. This is why growers like it, is because it's a seed mix, but they can get flowers that first year. It doesn't have to go through, sometimes with cone flowers, they've got to go through a year of vernalization before you get flowers. So from a production standpoint, growers love it. But I've seen plantings where it's just a huge mix of it, and it's just fantastic. Um, and typically it's not one of the tallest ones. It's not one of the shortest ones. It'll top out about 2.5 feet. But actually, I think there's been a number of selections where out of all these seedling batches, they're like, that one looks really good. And then they'll name that one separate and start producing that one asexually. Um, we've got barrenwort. This is ironically, a plant doesn't have to be new to be good. This is an old 175 years old. That's how old this cultivar is, and it's still one of the best ones. And epimediums, those of us, in the South, we're blessed with dry shade. And epimediums are one of those plants that can tolerate dry shade. And they're pretty much deer resistant. I will never say completely because they always surprise me, but it's just a fantastic plant for early spring flowers. I usually would recommend cutting the foliage back before the flowers start coming up because usually, it needs a refresh. And once the flowers start coming up, it would be like dealing with an MC Escher of trying to prune all the little stems. So cut it back before it starts flowering so you can really see the flower show. But then what's wonderful is the new growth on the leaves has that reddish cast to it, which will then transition to more to green. But just fantastic for dry shade. Now, does it mean it has to have dry shade? No, it's much happier if it has a little bit of moisture. But this will gradually spread about 4 to 6 inches. And you plant one plant, expect it going about 4 to 6 inches a year. But I love epimediums, and there's so many of them out there. But again, this one, pretty darn old, and it's held its own even against the new ones. So Epimedium sulphureum. This is a plant that it's kind of like I've talked about certain plants that just don't seem to sell because they aren't sexy looking in a container. But I love this plant. If you want pollinators go bonkers over this. And it has, what's nice is the foliage is almost yucca-like, but it's almost powdery blue. But then it sends this stalk up with, you can kind of see like it's almost like little satellites sitting out there. I've seen this used actually out in Oklahoma City. They had a huge sweep of panicum grass, but this was interplanted, so this was popping up through it, and just the contrast texture was amazing. I always love this plant. It's always one of those things I have to convince people of going, just take it home. Trust me on this. It will look better than it does in a container. But this is one that I've heard that, and I didn't realize this until recently. It isn't the longest lived perennial, but this is one that will drop seedlings around. So, it's kind of like make the investment now, it'll pay off, in dividends a little later. But again, if don't fertilize it. A lot of these plants that come from prairies, fertilizer is when they will flop and you'll be unhappy with them. It's kind of like they're too happy. Kind of like, if I eat too much, not the healthiest. This Heliopsis, I've got, there's been some really cool ones coming out with dark foliage, but even just one with just the plain Jane, green foliage, yellow flowers. What really attracts me to this is we have a border at our house and we have tons of deer going through. I have yet to see them touch Heliopsis. Now, that's just my personal observation with it. Again, kind of prairie species, doesn't like a lot of fertility. So it's kind of like you don't have to sit there and baby it. Get it in the ground, get it watered, and leave it be. It, yeah, yeah. Don't put it in shade. It would not be happy with that. I mean, I would say, middays, if it's, 6 inches, 6 hours, um, which should be sufficient. And this one tops out at about 3 to 4 feet in height. And like I said, there's some other ones, but this is just, the standard species really does well for you. Now I get influenced obviously by what my wife really loves, but both of us love iris. And it's kind of like when you go in most garden centers, you get the random bearded irises and Caesar's brother, and that's your choice. There are so many cool irises. This one, they actually took Iris pseudacaris, which is the yellow flag, which is invasive, which, dear Lord, don't ever buy. We've got it down in Lake Catherine, but they crossed that with Japanese water iris. And it's one of those things that the genetics got so mumbled up that it can't reproduce, but you got these amazing color patterns on the flowers. So you get this almost eyeliner type effect with them. They've got hybrid vigor, so they're good growers, but they're not going to drop viable seed. And that's where the yellow flag, someone plants it upstream, it drops its seed, it keeps working its way down. Well, this one, it's got the vigor out of that, but it doesn't have the fertility. And there's been a number of them coming out, and they're just stunning in terms of their colors. And this is one of those things I always advocate about diversity of having, you want Iris insata, Iris siberica, Iris unguicularis, so you can have all these different bloom windows being filled. So you could, theoretically have iris blooming in your garden 12 months out of the year. So this one, we saw this. We'll start getting some of these other hybrids that are just fantastic. Japanese water iris, these are stunning. They typically will flower after something like Caesar's brother. This species will flower about a month afterwards. Bigger flowers, they tend to be kind of flat topped, but just stunning colors. And again, this is just my effort to make sure that you've got a diverse plant palette to work with. A couple of these were blooming out of sequence in the cold frame, and they're just absolutely gorgeous. We'll put a couple of these in the pink and white garden. But this is one, again, about 3 feet tall, but 7-inch wide flowers. Just absolutely stunning and really nice foliage to it. That was one of the things that I never really liked about German bearded iris is the foliage usually looks pretty ratty. This is a really cool selection. I had mentioned Mount Cuba before. This was one of our native blue flag irises that they had planted out on the property. They had been watching it for about 20 years, and they finally went, we probably need to put a name on this because this one, when it emerges this dark purple to it. So, but unfortunately, it doesn't persist the whole year. Usually by about summer, it goes to green, but it's just a nice, you look at that clump that's emerging, it's a nice, color burst coming out of the ground, and then you get flowers. So it's kind of an expanded interest season to it. But this is one of our native irises. Like I said, don't think that because you put a name on it, you just change the genetics. It's just, hey, that's a really nice one. It's something that would, if you're doing a restoration of a, riparian buffer, would you plant just this? No, then you go with the species. So it's always make sure where you're putting the plants and what you're using it for. But I've been after this one. We've got a couple of these planted up by the boardwalk. I love just this effect in the spring. There's been way back when we started seeing these dark foliage hibiscus that were coming out a number of years ago, it was the Fleming brothers. They passed away, but Walter's Gardens, Hans Hansen has continued with the breeding on this. And I mean, I can't wait. I'm hoping we'll get this one called Cookies and Cream that is dark foliage with white flowers. But this is one called Perfect Storm because apparently they had another one named Storm that was too tall for people. So Hans was like, okay, another year of breeding, we'll shrink it. So this one only tops out at about 3 feet tall, but really dark foliage. Those wonderful dinner plate, size flowers on hibiscus that we all love. I mean, it's just embrace the gaudiness of them. But wonderful, light pink with a dark pink center. But just fantastic durable plants. They can take it wet. They can go into average garden soil. I just wouldn't put them in dry areas. But they absolutely thrive. I don't know. I mean, deer just. I think there's a personal vendetta from the herd that on our property. They know what I love and they'll eat it. But I don't know that this particularly attracts them or not. I mean, it's kind of like us, some people like cilantro, some people don't. That deer might be like, I love this one, and another one's like, are you crazy? This is one I always, it's our woodland phlox. It's such an easy plant. It's great to go ahead and plant. This is Blue Moon is what we'll have, which is kind of like this purplish blue. It's basically evergreen throughout the winter. When it goes to bloom, it's about 6 inches tall. Leave the seed heads up. If you've got, really nice organic soils, it'll start seeding around, which, it's a native, so that's fantastic. You get more out of it, and then you'll start getting different colors popping up. I have fond memories of at Plant Delights in the Woodland Garden. He had phlox Variegata through the whole garden, and it was like a cloud. He always used to say if it would just flower about 2 weeks later at the spring open house, he could have bankrolled the whole nursery. But you know, it's got a nice fragrance to it. It's just a fantastic perennial. Um, this is another one that came out. It was the Perennial Plant Association Plant of the Year for this year. Um, it's a tall garden phlox. Someone, you know, it's our native. Someone was walking along a river in Tennessee, went, that looks different. So she got cuttings of it, got it propagated, started sharing it. It ended up going into the trials at Mount Cuba. And one of the things that I love that Mount Cuba is doing is not just looking at, oh, you know, hey, does it check the box? Is it powdery mildew resistant? Yes, it's definitely. But one thing they're tracking is pollinators. You know, are they going towards these things? Because some things, you know, you look at the double cone flowers, they're not, they're, you know, they're pretty for us. Are they fulfilling that ecological role? Maybe not. But this one, they noticed that pollinator wise, it was 10 to 1 over just the straight species. You know, they have volunteers who'll sit there and count how many pollinators are going to plants. So this one we had, you know, Adrian and I, you know, we had this huge kind of, I call it our drought experiment, which is all the plants that we have yet to plant sitting on the driveway. I thought it was a butterfly bush at one point. I was like, I don't remember buying that. Then I looked and I was like, oh, crying out loud, it's a phlox. And you know, it's got smaller size flowers, but it makes up for it in number. And it is hands down one of the best phlox out on the market now. And it's a phlox Gina, you know, about 4 feet tall, but just a pollen, you know, you get beauty and ecological function with this one. And then, you know, just really, if you want the tall garden phlox, just gaudy pink opalescence. This is a really nice one. You know, what I love is when you start working with companies that are doing the breeding that you know they're very strict about what they're releasing, and Walters is that way. So this is one that has excellent powdery mildew resistance, so you don't have that, you know, white cast to the foliage that just makes them just ugly to look at. But this is just a nice form, really, you know, kind of a medium pink with a dark pink eye, about 3 feet tall. Black-eyed Susans. This was I always look, you know, it's kind of like there's certain organizations. What are they looking at to name? Perennial Plant Association is always one of those ones that they pick great plants. 2023, this was the plant of the year. American Gold Rush, Black-eyed Susan. The old standard one, Goldsturm, that we all knew, it gets like this leaf fungus that's hit. I don't know if it's a fungus or a bacteria, but it doesn't look good on the plant. It weakens the plant. This is resistant to that leaf spot. It stands, you know, Forrest kind of has them corralled because I think he was worried about them flopping. I'm like, don't do it next year because I think they've got sturdy stems. It stands probably about 3 feet tall, just fantastic black-eyed Susan. And we've got a couple different black-eyed Susans in the mix. We've got this one, American Gold Rush, then Little Gold Star, and this came out of I think Gelato Seeds, where you know Goldsturm used to stand pretty tall, and it had sometimes a tendency to flop. Well, they made a selection of it that was about half the height. So this one's only, you know, about 15 inches tall, but same bloom power, same flowers as Goldsturm, but just, you know, a little shorter in stature, but loads of flowers. I mean, this is just, it's kind of one of those, everyone knows what a black-eyed Susan is. But just, you know, this is one that has just better form to it. Sedum Autumn Fire. So I think we all knew Autumn. Oh my goodness, I'm forgetting the old one. Autumn Joy. Um, so this is just a better selection. You know, they did some breeding off of Autumn Joy. And if you've this is a fun plant if you want to get kids to like look at bugs. When it comes into flower, the pollinators go crazy over it. You know, and this one has better, you know, better growth habit. It doesn't flop. Now, one thing, do not put sedum in wet soils. That will just make them look horrible and they'll slowly die. They want well-draining soils, but fantastic for, I've always seen these paired with ornamental grasses. It's just a nice combination. Great late season flowering, but just durable plants. This is one that is finally getting the recognition that it needed. Indian pinks. We had a couple, I think we had Raging Cajun and I forget, Little Redhead, maybe in the spring sale. And then I saw they've got a new one. And this one is picked as the darkest red of them. This is a perennial, sun or shade. It'll flower a little less in the shade, but one thing, you can deadhead it, it'll reflower again. It's a fantastic native perennial, and it's finally getting the recognition. I've got one plant that's been in my parents' yard for 20 years now, and the hummingbirds love it. So, it's kind of like, oh, new one. I'm kind of like squirrel. Gotta have it. Some of the asters, I think we've got 2 or 3 different asters in the plant sale. This just happens to be the one that I had a good photo of. This is Grape Crush. These are the New England asters. Typically just forms a big mound, and just covered. You barely see any leaves on it. This one will stand just shy of about 2.5 feet in height. Little bit wider than that. This one doesn't flop and open up. It'll stay. Sometimes, it sometimes makes me think of like the football mums, but which I'm not that fond of. But these, I think you can blend in the garden. I love that purple color to it. And again, asters are one of those things. The late blooming perennials are fantastic for the insects that have to build up their reserves before they go, dormant. So you want to have, that a lot of flower power still going into late in the season, and asters are one of the best ones to do that. Veronicastrum, I've wanted to grow this for so long, and I think there might be 1 or 2 plants in the entire meadow that I've seen bloom. So, this was okay. I want to add it to the meadow, but let's offer it for the plant sale. They're really cool because I always love how the leaves are whorled around the stem. So it's multiple leaves that kind of like rise as the stem goes up, and then it transitions to these wonderful, like almost they look like Veronica blooms that just get stuck on there. But blooming in early, kind of mid to late spring. This selection is called Fascination. It's funny how many of our native perennials, Tony would always describe it. Our native perennials have to go to Europe to get educated. So whenever the Dutch were growing it, they were like, "Hey, this is a fantastic selection." So it's kind of like has to go across the ocean before we'll take a look at our own natives. But this is just a fantastic plant for the garden, getting some height in the garden, 6 feet tall. So if you're looking for that tall element in your border, this is a great pick for that. Okay, moving on. Ferns, ferns. If there's one attribute that should sell every fern, they're deer resistant. I don't know what exactly it is, if it's the scales, but deer do not eat ferns. So, it's great filler. Maybe you try to make it where they get, you plant so thick in ferns that they can't get to the things that the hostas. But we've got a good selection of these. I always love maidenhair fern. And these, they're going to be happiest when they've got moist soils. They can do fine in average soils. They're just not going to grow as rapidly. We've got some nice stands of these down in the wildflower garden along the trails. But in 10 years, you plant one plant, it's going to be about 2 feet wide. So this is something that if you're looking to fill a big space, you're going to need to buy a lot of plants. So buy a lot of plants. But there's just something about the architecture on these that I think everyone just gravitates towards. This is a really cool one that came out of Plant Delights. It was one of our Japanese painted ferns that Tony noticed. This thing is much bigger than any of the other ones. So it had a little bit of hanky-panky in the garden with what he thought was lady fern. So instead of, it being a Japanese painted fern that was 2 feet tall, it was 3 feet tall. So, this really gives you that silvery texture, that silvery foliage with that wonderful kind of purple stipe that gives you that nice bicolor effect. but gives you much more presence in the garden. And this one again, all the ferns really prefer more moist soils. The only one that really, prefers it a little more dry is our Christmas fern, which, that's another one that I swear I've never seen them look good at retail. It's just one of those ones of just get it in the ground, it'll be much happier. Which we will have Christmas fern, but this is a fantastic fern to have. This is one that I always lusted after when I worked at Tony's because it was a big, really big presence in the garden, standing about 4 feet tall. It's a naturally occurring hybrid between log fern and I think can't remember what the other common name is, but basically two fern species were growing together and they created this hybrid. I think it was Tony got his original plants from the late Larry Mellenchamp, who was just a fantastic native plant promoter. But these are just fantastic. I always like evergreen ferns. I like having that backdrop. I like having that texture. And this is one that'll give you some presence, but it is clump forming. So it's not like the lady ferns or the Japanese painted fern that will slowly spread. It's a clump. So you plant one, you're going to have one. It doesn't multiply. The clump can get bigger, but it's not going to really spread. And then this is a really cool, I think it's Korean fern, tassel fern. Just the texture on it gives you it's delicate, but it's got some meat to it. This is another clump forming evergreen fern. So, this is something that if you're looking to have a lot, you're going to have to buy multiple plants. But if you want a nice specimen to kind of pair with some other things, that's what I would go with. But again, deer resistant. Boy, I mean, I'm going to have to lean into that with our property. Grasses and sedges, these sedges especially are really getting more recognition for the workhorses they can be in the garden. We've got this Carex flaccosperma, which is it's called blue wood sedge, and it has nice of a kind of a chalky blue color to it. We've planted a bunch of this up at the boardwalk, really, fills in and it'll seed about, so it'll kind of keep multiplying and filling in areas. But this is a fantastic one, only about 6 to 12 inches tall. I would not put it in full sun. What's nice is we've got so many sedges to deal with. If you need a sedge for sun, there probably is one. But this one is happiest in part sun to shade. Moist soils more so than dry soils. I I wouldn't. I mean, I think these, they'll keep growing. I mean, you can always come back like early, I would say like February before any growth. If they're looking a little rattier than you want, just cut them back a bit, not to the ground. Hmm. No, I would not worry about separating them. Believe me, I'm looking for low, not no maintenance, but low maintenance. But this one, there's one called Bunny Blue that's a different species, but it's patented. And I'm like, well, I can't tell the difference between this one and that one. So this one's a little cheaper, but still does what you want. This is our native switchgrass, and when we've got it growing up in the parking lot is where we've got all the pots sitting. Chalky blue foliage to it. It's fantastic. When we had Jenks Farmer here helping us with getting the plantings at the greenhouse, he was like, that is one of the best ones I'm growing. This one isn't going to be one of the really tall ones, but it's about 4 feet tall. But just the color on it right now is just singing. I haven't grown this one personally in my yard, but looking at the color, I would definitely want to get one of these. It's just a fantastic texture. And any of the panicums are, just don't put them in wet soils. They're not that happy, and don't throw a lot of fertility at them. That's when you're going to get them to flop. And then this is an old cultivar, Shenandoah, this was one of the first ones. Again, had to go over to Europe to get, educated, but came back to us. And this one will top out about 3 to 4 feet tall. But what's nice is about midsummer, you'll start seeing these red tints coming to it, and it intensifies as it goes into fall. So you get the wonderful seed heads and the flower heads to it, but then this wonderful red color to it. And there's been some new ones that have come out since then. Ruby Ribbons, I think, is one that springs to mind. But this is an old one, an oldie but a goodie. This is one that I'm really kind of excited about. The uh, prairie grass. So a lot of people grow Calamagrostis Carl Forester, which is not one of our native grasses, but it really gives you a strong vertical element in the garden. Um, this is one, it's going to be taller than Carl Forrester, but really gives you that vertical element. And I love how their photos, showed kind of how it's really tight. It starts to splay a little bit and then it kind of floofs out a little bit. But this is one, we've got the species out in the meadow and it always stands out to me in the spaces it is. But just the color on those stems, it looks like it's been plugged in. So this is Sorghastrum Golden Sunset. Um, and the seed heads one thing you can always do is to cut them and put them in dried arrangements or put them in regular arrangements. I always love using ornamental grasses in your cut flower arrangements. So pardon me for the cultivar name. I can't stand when they're giving them these code names you know, that's a different lecture. Shrubs. So we've got a good mix of a lot of native shrubs in here. This is one that this time of year, it may be just a stick in a pot because most of our buckeyes start to, at the end of the season, they drop their leaves early. But this is painted buckeye. This is the one that early spring, when you're driving around and you see things flowering in the woods with almost kind of a chartreusey green flower to it. It's painted buckeye. It's one of those indicators that always tells me, okay, spring's really starting to crank up, especially if you're doing I-85 from the 40 split going up into Durham. You can see it in the woods there. I absolutely love this plant, but it's one of those things that just does not look good in a pot. So this is one to trust me on. But it leaves out early, like I said, early spring and gets this kind of greenish yellow flower. I love seeing them in the woods. I really want to get some patches established in the woods here now that we're getting the ivy under control. But painted buckeye, beautyberry. I mean, what can you say? Great fall color, great fruit. Someone, I don't know, I can't remember who it was, made me beautyberry jam, which was excellent. But of course, Mike Durr always said, you throw enough sugar on something, everything tastes good. But this is another great plant. Deer tend to leave it alone, as far as I can remember. What's fun is there's a anecdote about the Native Americans used to use this plant to keep mosquitoes away. So scientists actually went and they discovered that there is a compound in beautyberry that is a deterrent for mosquitoes. So if you have this in the yard and you're weeding and you're getting bothered, grab a couple leaves, crush them up, and just rub them on your arms, and it deters mosquitoes. So we've just got the straight species in the sale, but I mean the straight species has that wonderful purple fruit on it. Really stands out, especially contrasts nicely. Mother Nature's a good designer of having it contrast with that the yellow fall color. Cephalanthus, these, one thing I will caution, they can get big, but they take really well to just hacking them back. I had these growing along the pond edges when I was at High Point. So at times they were in a foot deep of water. They can go from that situation to relatively not dry. They're not happy when they're dry, but it can tolerate a wide range of conditions. And those flowers, so each little spike you see coming off the flowers is from an individual flower. So the pollinators have tons to go to, and they really are drawn to this plant. Typically, the fall color isn't like screaming yellow, but it's kind of a yellow, but easy, tough as nails plant that the pollinators absolutely love. Edgeworthia, it's kind of like if you don't have one in your yard, you need to. I always describe it, it's a Daphne that lives. It gives you that wonderful Daphne-like fragrance in the spring. What's nice is, naturally grows rounded. The flower buds, when they starting to swell, they're covered in silver hairs. So even before it officially flowers, it looks like little silver bells hanging off of it. And then it opens up. And, this is a plant Put one by a window you might open on a warm spring day, put it by your door, put it by, when you're going to your car, because that fragrance is just absolutely amazing. It's one of those plants I would not garden with. Is that bad English? Not garden without. You know what I'm saying. You got to have it in the garden. It's been a long summer. Um, Verbal skills are starting to decline. Virginia sweet spire, another plant. These are fantastic. If you've got a formal garden, this isn't the plant for you because it does spread by runners. So if you've got a slope you want to work on holding something, or you've got a big space, because it will start spreading. They did a landscape at High Point and they used this, and it was popping up through everything. So you have this formal boxwood hedge with sweet spire popping all through it. Drove the maintenance guys nuts. But this is one, if you've got a more naturalistic garden that you want to let things kind of spread about, it is one of those fantastic multi-season shrubs. So you get these white pendant flowers in the spring. They've got a nice fragrance to them. You get amazing fall color, and even the stems are kind of almost a Merlot color to them. So even the stems have interest in winter. And again, typically this will grow sometimes in almost swampy like soils. It can go to that extreme, but wide range of soils. Now these are just straight species, so some might be taller than others. There's like Little Henry that was selected because it was smaller, but when you're getting the straight species, it's kind of like gambler's choice of, are you getting a big one or a smaller size one? But just a fantastic plant to have in the garden. This is something that we got really lucky, that someone made a mistake. The supplier to Piedmont Carolina Nursery somehow sent them a whole bunch of, not Virginia sweet spire. This is evidence that do not do PowerPoint at 11 o'clock at night. This is an Asian equivalent to our spice bush. But this is an Asian species, but it is absolutely, I've never seen a plant that attracts me more in terms of fall color. I love Pleasant Run Nursery had this fantastic photo showing the gradation of the fall color. Just absolutely brilliant fall color. Even during the summer, most plants you look at by the end of the summer, that green is like this washed out, beat up green. It looks almost lacquered. It's this dark green, wonderful foliage throughout the summer. And then when fall comes, it's just like the show starts. Just absolutely stunning fall color. Being in the spice bush family, it's got that, you crush it, it's almost like a menthol scent. So the deer don't like it. And then as it transitions in the fall, it'll hold on to its leaves in the fall. And this is something that, maybe you don't like this, but it holds on to these tan leaves. So it almost gives you a whole different shade of color in the winter. This is one of my mentors, Bob Lyons. He was the former director at the Ralston when I was there. We were visiting his garden. Every fall, his Facebook feed is him tracking the progress of this in his garden. And you can kind of see that kind of tawny color that you get in the fall, and it'll hold the leaves throughout most of the winter. And you can see how dark those leaves are. But this was something that Piedmont Carolina, one of their suppliers accidentally sent them a whole bunch. They're like, "Do you want them?" You better believe it. And the plants we've got, they're standing about yay tall, about, they're probably, well, for those on Zoom, they're standing about 6 feet tall and about 4 feet wide. They're fantastic looking specimen plants. And this is something that typically in our area, like it drives me crazy. You go up north, you can buy this no problem. Here, you've got to mail order it and you get a little gallon pot. So this is an opportunity to really get a specimen plant. So just, I know one's going in my garden. Yes, I would say Asian spice bush. Spice bush. Yeah. Again, talking about multi-season. So early spring, it's kind of like sulfur chartreusey flowers, little flowers on it. Then great foliage during the summer, then amazing fall color, and then this kind of, it almost is an evergreen hedge. It just is ever tan. Um, but I've seen it go from part sun to the more sun it gets, the more it kind of lights up. But I absolutely adore this plant. This is something that unless we order this again, it just was a happy accident. Um, yes. I've never paid attention to the birds going for it or not. And I've never like we had it at the Ralston Arboretum way back when I was there, and I don't remember this species ever, it kind of frustrated me because it never set up seedlings. I don't know if it's something it's got to be processed so much that it just doesn't fit into our ecosystem that much. Um, so I'm not as concerned. There was another species that tended to seed around a lot that I would be more hesitant to planting, but this one didn't. Yeah. So I mean, maybe that's the good thing is they're like, okay, we're going to leave that one there. Um, let's see. So nine bark. And this is one that I quite honestly, I never really, I tried a lot of the cultivars that were coming out with the purple leaves and the yellow or the gold leaves. And I've always kind of preferred just the straight species. They get kind of as they get older, they can get kind of exfoliating bark. It's got the white flowers in the spring that transition to this fantastic, almost ruby or garnet colored fruit to it. It's a fantastic multi-season shrub for the garden. Um, Salix flame. This is a fantastic plant. Again, this is a cutback shrub for most intents and purposes. I would recommend every couple years just hack it back because you're going to get the most vibrant stem color out of it. Um, but it was tough as nails. Fantastic if you're doing arrangements to stick those stems in winter arrangements. Um, and it's great when those rare instances when we get snow, it really jumps out at you in the landscape. But really easy to grow, good for wet soils. If you're trying to hold back some soils, like you've got a creek area or something like that, it's just tough as nails, and it stays as one plant. It doesn't sucker. But I would recommend cutting it back periodically because most of your color twigs, it's kind of like as they get older, they start losing their shine. That's not a commentary on anything. Um, so that's running through a lot of the other things. I'll run through because it's a matter of trying to come up with photos and descriptions and everything. I'll call out a couple other things that I think are on our list, that are worth looking at. We do have we have chrysanthemum niches October glow, which, that one originated out of the old niche gardens in Chapel Hill. If you love the old hardy chrysanthemums, it's a great one to have in the garden. Um, we've got Nish's October Glow chrysanthemum. We've got two selections of columbine. There's little lanterns, which looks like our normal columbine, but it's a little dwarf one, and Corbett, which is a pale yellow. So those are really nice. We've got, let's see, two other types of coneflower, including Echinacea tennesseeensis rocky top, which I always love that one. It's more of a prayer, one of those species, do not baby it. It will be very unhappy if you care for it. Um, let's see, we've got Helianthus, we've got some heucheras, we've got a couple different heucheras, including Velosa, which is the more heat tolerant. Anytime you're looking at heucheras, if you see Velosa, that's a good indication that's one of the better ones for the south. Some of the other species absolutely just melt in our area, and they always make fantastic container plants. Let's see. We also have copper iris, which is Iris fulva. I think they're looking a little rough, but they'll be fantastic. The roots are fantastic. But that was one of the ones that, when you talk about Louisiana irises, that imparted the red pigments into Louisiana irises. We've got a couple of those planted up at the boardwalk. Monarda, we've got some Monarda. We have our native Pachysandra procumbens, which that's a fantastic ground cover. Some penstemons, pycnanthemum, which is one of the perennial plants of the year. It's a absolutely amazing pollinator plant. Really nice in the garden, but give it space because it's a mint. So I would almost say if you can get a nice, beautiful container that you can set in your garden and put your mint in there, unless you have the space to let it go, because it will do as mints do. It will spread. We have, let's see, three different solidagos, so goldenrods. There's one called Wichita Mountains that the first time I saw it was in Colorado and my jaw dropped. When you think goldenrod, I'm not picturing this, spreading out flower. I'm picturing a goldenrod. And that's how this one is. It almost looks like if you think about Liatris or gay feather and just turn it brilliant yellow. It's a fantastic one that, I'm always excited. Anytime we can get a hold of it, it's, jump on that to get it for the plant sale. Um, Tiarellas. So it's again, I think we have over 120, 130 different types of plants in the plant sale. It's always a big revenue generator for the gardens. And, we with the opening of the conservatory, that revenue is helpful. But just running through finally, just a couple quick reminders. Again, you can pre-order up until the Wednesday before the sale. It's going to cut off at 8 o'clock. That gives us enough time to process all the orders so they're ready to be picked up. We do ask that you pay ahead of time for pickup. It just really helps us out with just the logistics of getting everything done. I think we're usually typically processing 120 different orders for pickup. So any help is greatly appreciated. Once we get your order tallied, that we verify, yes, we do have it. And I will say sometimes we don't count right. We're plant people, not accountants. We try to make it right, but we really try to double check to make sure that we do have the plants for your order. But you'll get an email confirming it with the plant total and a payment link. So we try to make it as easy as possible. I'm hoping by spring we might have a better system that is a little more user friendly and processor friendly for me. But then pickup will be on Friday, September 27th from 10 to 6 p.m. Again, you can continue shopping to your heart's content. And again, if you are listening or in the audience and aren't a friend, I won't shame you publicly, but no, I just encourage you. That's an easy way to support the gardens and keep them free and open to the public. If you don't get the email, reach out to me. We'll make sure that if sometimes an email gets lost or it's .con instead of .com, and we'll get that fixed and get the links out to you. But it's the kickoff of fall, is the fall plant sale. So just we'll see you out on that front lawn, either picking up your plants or buying more. But thank y'all for your time and also just for your enthusiasm and support for the gardens.
Fantastic right now.
But
Yeah,
every year is a little better.
it is a lot better.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be out of town that weekend. Could I pick them up later?
Yeah.
Okay. Just
I don't
indicate that.
advertise that, but yeah,
Okay. Great.
because if we said, oh, you can pick up other,